Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. We all know about DRS, the drag reduction system that helps the car behind overtake the car in front. But what about reverse DRS? A new idea from Formula 1 and the FIA to slow down deliberately a car leading the race, preventing them streaking off into the distance to help the car behind actually keep up and increase the quality of the racing. An inspired idea or an absolutely terrible one? Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Clearly, Formula 1 and the FIA have been watching rather too much VOD of Verstappen winning in Belgium, where he was leading within about 15 laps and 14th on the grid, and then won the race by an absolute mile. We've not just seen this with Red Bull and Max Verstappen this year, but with Mercedes and Hamilton and other cars in years past. Now, Formula 1 has really been pushing lately, for understandable reasons, the entertainment value of the sport. They want to ensure that, the races are maximally entertaining. That's why they've got these sprint races going on now. They want to have more of them. That's why they're saying, let's put up points for practice and all this stuff to make more people tune in throughout the course of a weekend. However, what about slowing down the leading cars such that the grid is more packed together, basically, and you get more entertaining fights, rather than when Verstappen's leading in the Red Bull, it's GG well played because you know that no one's going to be able to catch him. Understandable philosophy, but arguably the way they're going about it is definitely the wrong approach. Now, this is DRS, of course, the drag reduction system, as it currently works, introduced back in like 2011 or something now, but a few iterations of it. As it currently stands, in certain elements or certain sections of straight on tracks, if you are within 1 second of the car ahead, you can open a flap in your rear wing, give you an extra 10-15 miles an hour depending on track conditions and altitude and stuff like this, to gain the advantage to try and overtake that car in front, to effectively counteract the effect of dirty air, because it's difficult to follow in corners with Formula 1 cars. The car in front makes all the turbulent air. That means your downforce doesn't work so well, so it's harder to follow through corners. DRS is meant to counteract that by giving an advantage in the straights for the car behind. Makes sense, but arguably this season, because the cars can follow easier with the new regulations, and new regulations are coming in 2026 as well, then DRS has arguably been too powerful in that certain moves are done far before the drivers even get to a certain corner. That's DRS. This is active aerodynamics. You're allowed to press a button on your steering wheel and change the position of your rear wing flap to reduce the drag in a straight line. You can only use it in a straight line nowadays, of course, and not in the corners. However, what about reverse DRS? So either in addition to or instead of increasing the speed of the car behind, what about reducing the speed of the car in front? So this is a new idea, a new bright idea that Formula 1 and the FIA have come up with to introduce active suspensions. This will probably come in the next time the regulations are devised in 2026. So active aero will not just be on the rear wing flap, but will be elsewhere in the car as well. This is how Ross Brawn describes it, recently retired from his role as Formula 1's managing director, but some rumours that he might go join Ferrari as their team principal, that seems unlikely. But as he said here, one of the big things about the 2026 car is whether we have active aerodynamics. I think that's an efficiency step which is very appealing. It's got to be sorted out that how it can be done, if it can be done safely and predictably, but active aerodynamics, we semi-have them at the moment with DRS, but can you do things much more significantly? Now, this is the key part of this article. If you have active aero, then of course you could affect the car in front. You have the proximity that once you get within a certain, degree, a second, 2 seconds, whatever, the car in front loses a bit of downforce and you gain a bit of downforce. There's tricks you can play with that. And this is the thing, tricks, right? It's a gimmick. It's, that's my perspective. It becomes an opportunity. I'm not saying we would do that, but it becomes an opportunity. So the 2026 car is lessons learned from what we have now. And I think we'll incorporate some form of active aerodynamics, basically been considered reverse DRS. And, he basically goes on to say that, they will be doing almost certainly some form of active aero. Now, they would have to do a good job of this, of course, and it would have to be very cleverly implemented. But, what do you guys think about this on the surface? To me, this is a really interesting and strange and probably not a good idea. The fact of the matter is, we want the cars to be competitive. In an ideal world, all 10 cars or all 20 cars on the grid are exactly the same ability, and the races are absolutely fantastic. The reality is that's not going to be the case, but in an ideal world, all the teams are relatively close in competitiveness, such that on certain tracks, some cars do well, on certain tracks, other cars do well, rather than one car or two cars always dominating every weekend. But as it currently stands, they have taken steps to try and make that happen with the budget cap that all teams have to comply to, but also the idea that the wind tunnel testing time and simulator testing is dependent on your position in the previous year's championship. If you're first, you get much less development time, well, not development time, but testing time than you get if you are Williams and you're in 10th place. So that's their way of trying to level the playing field in terms of how competitive the cars are on the field. Understandable, makes a fair bit of sense. This, though, is going to a whole nother level. Let's say a car is too good, you're deliberately slowing them down. So yeah, once you get within a certain proximity, I think the way they've really described this as is it's a way to prevent cars driving off into the distance. Let's say you're Max Verstappen in Belgium, you're getting 2 seconds ahead of the cars behind. All of a sudden, your front wing changes angle, or the floor of your car raises up like automatically based on that proximity, and you now have a bit less downforce. Your car is now 0.2 of a second a lap slower or something, and then you fall back within that 2 seconds. Your car then changes again, so now you're as quick as you were before. It's like, first of all, I'm sure all the teams and all the drivers would disagree with this, unless, like, I don't know, maybe Williams being the weakest team would be kind of interested in this concept. But yeah, I mean, it seems like the drivers are not going to be happy with this at all, I'm sure, especially because when I first heard about this, my concern was, like, how exactly is this executed if it is going to be executed? Let's say I'm Max Verstappen in my Red Bull, and I'm 1.9 seconds of the car behind me, and at 2 seconds, my wing is going to change to give me less downforce, and the car behind is going to get more downforce so they can catch up. So, basically it's just gimmicking entertainment into the system. Not a good way for the premiere of motorsport to be, in my opinion. But, what if that's the case? I'm heading down into turn 1, let's say it's Silverstone, going into turn 1, pretty much a flat-out right-hander right through, is it called Abbey? I don't even know anymore. But, pretty much a flat-out right-hander. I'm going through, I've got a 2-second gap on the guy behind me, and all of a sudden my aero changes, my front wing changes its angle, my floor raises up a bit to reduce my downforce by about 2 or 3%. I send it through the corner at full speed, as I normally would, and I don't have the downforce. I spit out, smash into the wall, out of the race. That was my initial thought when this was the case, right? Like, if you're changing, if your car's behaving in a certain way, and then you change the aero to make the car behave in a different way, middle of the race, and now, like, one lap my car has less downforce, the next lap my car has more downforce, like, how am I learning how to take the corners? Like, it's an absolute mess for the drivers, I'm sure, and also for the teams, because maybe their car works well on this aero setup and doesn't on this aero setup, and I'm sure there'd be, like, teams would be trying to fiddle with this technology to ensure that the FIA can, like, deal with it in the same way. Like, what an absolute disaster class this could be. But they want to do something like this. It might not go as far as to become reverse DRS, as we are describing, that if a car gets too far ahead, they slow them down, but there might be something they decide to do, not maybe just with DRS or the rear wing, or could be other elements of the car they change. But yeah, what a crazy idea. Maybe it means they can get rid of DRS, but it seems to just be a bad solution to some teams having great cars. Like, some teams are going to have better cars than others. That's how it is. And I can understand that you don't want the car in front driving off with a 25-second gap to the front of the field, but even if there is a car dominating, doesn't mean the racing isn't still entertaining in the midfield, right? So yeah, I don't know. Seems like another gimmick the Formula 1 guys are trying to implement. Not a great idea in my opinion. Few things to mention before we close out the video. Firstly, this big news actually, because the Chinese Grand Prix next season in Shanghai is going to be cancelled. It's not going to happen. It's a guarantee at this point. Now, the rumour was it wasn't going to get replaced. 24 races next season was going to be 23, and that was done and dusted. However, apparently, according to, this fella is very reputable as well, he reckons Formula 1 have been in touch with Portugal for the Portimao circuit and are trying to bring that back. So the fact that this is stated by this individual, there's a decent chance this is going to happen. And if it does, that's very exciting actually, that the Chinese Grand Prix might be replaced. Unfortunate for China and Zhou, but, like with the restrictions, it's just not going to happen right now. So, yeah, apparently Portimao could be back on the circuit. Pretty exciting prospect, because definitely a solid track for Formula 1. Quick note as well on McLaren. IndyCar driver Alex Palou will be the reserve man for McLaren next season when the schedule allows. So, he's actually racing still for Ganassi next season, but he's going to join McLaren in IndyCar in 2024. That's right. So, yeah, really interesting stuff. Pretty exciting stuff as well, because, yeah, McLaren have offered a lot of people in various motorsports to be part of McLaren, but as yet they haven't really given many of them much chance in a Formula 1 car. And, I think we saw it from Pato O'Ward earlier this season. Alex Palou, I think, also got a few laps in the McLaren back at Austin maybe as well. So, that is one piece of news to mention. Just a quick update as well, because you guys might have seen these rumours, that the idea is for wet races, when the visibility is so bad for the spray of the car ahead, introduce some sort of wheel arch to effectively keep the spray down. Now, it's an interesting idea, because as it currently currently stands, the spray goes up into the sky. Now, if you add some sort of wheel arch on the back of the wheel during specifically wet conditions, then it does prevent the spray going up in the air, but arguably it just forces all the spray back towards the car behind at like eye level. So I don't know if it's actually a good or a bad thing necessarily, but apparently it's one that the tyre manufacturer Pirelli is thinking about to potentially implement going forward as well. Quick update on Ferrari, because Fred Vasseur is still the leading candidate, but there's some interesting articles coming out from Amos and other sources that say that, you'd think Ferrari would be one of the most appealing jobs in the world. Like, you'd think it's like being the manager of Real Madrid. Everyone's gunning for that job. All the managers are competing for that position. At Ferrari, I think one source in the paddock said, like, you only take that job if you've got no other options, is basically what they said. So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with Fred Vasseur, whether he actually wants the job, but, a bit of a disaster class from Ferrari not having a clear replacement. They will apparently decide before the new year, when, I think, December 31st or whatever is where Binotto's tenure is at an end, but, still not necessarily such a good look for them. And just to mention this also, because Ferrari made the biggest step forward in terms of points from 21 to 22. Red Bull had a big one. Mercedes, between both campaigns, only lost about 98.5 points, which I thought was kind of impressive in a way, and interesting that they didn't really lose that many points, because you think about it, when you're at the front of the field, the difference between first and third is much bigger in terms of points than the difference between 8th and 9th, right? So, it's definitely one to mention. So the biggest loser actually was McLaren, right, losing 116 points between the two seasons. Alpine didn't really do much better, but, they got fourth based on McLaren being terrible, basically. Alpha Tauri, the other big losers, 142 points, down to just 35 last season. So some big winners, Alpha at the start of the year, Haas as well, technically, although at the end of the season, it was kind of barely a W. In terms of race pace, they got a pole position, which was nice. So all the teams on the grid, at some point in their career, have a pole position to their name. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.